I think we got to Hamburg round about 1 o'clock in the morning.
As we were just schoolboys, so we got to Hamburg, this fleshpot city. Well, we had a bit of fun.
You know, the first time we got into the St. Pauli area, which was the biggest red light district in the world at that time. Another great learning curve for us, but that's what we wanted from rock and roll.
Einmalig in St. Pauli auf der Reeperbahn, Meier. Schauen Sie ganz unverbindlich rein. Andres Fallmeier. Schauen Sie ganz unverbindlich rein. Das ist eine Aufgabe, große Paris.
Well, there's all the gangsters, and there's the transvestite, and there's the hookers. It was exciting.
At that time, we were just kids let off the leash, really, come straight from Liverpool to Hamburg. And we were used to these little Liverpool girls, but by the time you got to Hamburg, if you got a girlfriend there, she was likely to be a stripper. She was the only kind of people who were around at the time we were around late at night there. So, for someone who'd not really had much sex in their lives before, which none of us really had, to be suddenly involved with a sort of hardcore striptease artist, who obviously knew a thing or two about sex, was quite an eye-opener.
Everything else was such a buzz, you know, being right in the middle of the naughtiest city in the world at 17 years old. It was kind of exciting.
When we actually approached the Reeperbahn, that to us was like mini America, because it was just a maze of neon lights. Strip clubs, bars, even when we turned into the Grosse Freiheit, that was still the same. We thought when we jumped out and ran down steps again into the Kaiser Keller, we were going to be playing there. Raring to start. Koschmider, who was the manager, turned around and said, no, you're not playing the Kaiser Keller. You're going to be playing the Indra. It was a church. Everything was dark. A cinema at the end of Bambikino, which we ended up being our flea pit. And the Indra. No neon lights, no noise coming from it. We all waltzed in there, and Bruno Koschmider turned around and said, this is the Indra, and this is where you're going to play. You're going to turn this into another Kaiser Keller.
Yeah, they were 5 in the beginning when they came here. It was John, Paul and George, Stu Sutcliffe on bass and Pete Best on drums. And Pete only joined the band 2 days before they came to Hamburg. And the only reason he was in the band was that he had a drum set.
The Indra was a strip club, and Koschmider owned that Indra club. He thought before somebody else does a second place, he will do a second place. And so they were playing 30 minutes music and 30 minutes striptease.
The door to the Bambikino was that door.
We come to this concrete dungeon, and what we think is a bed on the other side, but no light. That was our sleeping quarters.
We stayed in this place called the Bambikino, and we had just a little room right next to the toilet, so it was really kind of, you know, forget it. I mean, they wouldn't have allowed it, actually. We used to sleep under this Union Jack flag, you know, because it was cold, there was no heating, you know. And this is winter in Germany.
And they stayed there like tramps, you know. And when I think about it, I still get mad to this Koschmider bastard.
When I met the Beatles the first time, I was still barmaid in the Kaiser Keller, and I went to the Indra because people were saying, oh, they are so nice, and they look nice, and so all these young girls. And when I went there, I thought, well, good-looking guys, but with the music, that wasn't so good then. George was only 17, and the others not much older. They didn't have so much experience then.
Yeah. So that first time we went out there, we played at the Indra, and what happened was we were thrown in the deep end in Hamburg. There'd be no one in the club. We played quite long hours. Some nights we'd do 8 hours, you know. So we learned a lot of stagecraft in getting people in, and we gradually did, you know. We'd learn tricks.
I think that's where we found our style. We developed our style because of this fellow, he used to say, you've got to make a show for the people. And he used to come up every night shouting, "Mac show." So we used to Mac show, and John used to dance around like a gorilla.
We had these purple jackets that I'd had made up by Mr. Richards, who used to live next door to us, who was a tailor. And I'd bought the material, black jeans and like winkle picker shoes, which really seemed amazing at the time. And all the waiters, where you get your shoes, please? You send me some.
This is what happens very quickly, that first of all, nobody knew, but then by talking, after a week or even 14 days, the place was crowded.
There were complaints from the neighbors that it was too loud, and then after 6 weeks, live music wasn't allowed here anymore. Bruno Koschmider then said, okay, now you can come to my bigger club, his first club, at the Kaiserkeller.
After the Indra, we moved along to another club called the Kaiserkeller, means the King's Cellar. So we had to do the whole thing over again then. We had to build up our audience there, and it was a bigger club, so you had to build up more people.
Bruno Koschmider, I think that he was a tragic figure. He was a gay or queer man, how do you say it now, I don't know. And that was a forbidden then, you know, to go in jail. He wasn't such a happy person, but he had these ideas which opened the first place for the youth, the Kaiserkeller. This is what Bruno Koschmider does.
Koschmider was a disabled person. He had a stiff leg, but also he had always a chair leg here where he's stiff-legged to hit people on the head.
And it's here, along one of the most celebrated streets in the world, that the sailors make their way in search of the lurid pleasures of Hamburg's nightlife, on the Reeperbahn.
In Große Freiheit, which is a street just off the Reeperbahn, probably like the toughest area in Hamburg.
That was the time when the fist was the law. The gangsters all get together, and you couldn't do anything in St. Pauli club owner.
Because every club along the Große Freiheit had a porter, really in uniform with a hat and all that, and they were the information system.
The first Don here was Paulchen Müller and his black gang. Horst Fascher was in that black gang.
No one would go against the system, and if they did, they didn't last very long.
But you're dealing with gangsters here, you know. You find yourself in the elbow. And especially they like showbiz and music and that type of thing. That's why a lot of them open clubs.
After the war, it was the big thing, boxing. They were the waiters in the Kaiserkeller and later on in the Star Club as well.
So these are hard-case gangsters, you know. But they were fine with us, because when you were there, you were under their protection.
We were told when we got into any sort of bother to mention the word Kapelle, meaning band, and we would be protected.
And here right behind me, we have a print of the original poster that announced the Beatles in 1960. The funny thing is, of course, the Beatles are second on the bill. The big name was this other band from Liverpool, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. And they are very important in Beatles history because the drummer of Rory Storm's band was Ringo Starr. So they met Ringo here.
The Reeperbahn definitely was not a place for Hamburg youth. The Hamburg youth were not allowed by their parents to even go there.
Because the Reeperbahn is not a place where young ladies in the 50s or 60s were to have seen or go there. You know, it was not a nice place to go.
So I knew pretty much all extraordinary people in Hamburg, artistic types, which were called existentialists, exis they were actually called. And our biggest enemies were rockers.
By the end of the 50s, fights in Hamburg between the exis and the rockers.
I went to art school, and that's where I met Klaus and Astrid.
The first time I met the Beatles was to my former boyfriend, Klaus Forman, who saw them one night when he was wandering around Hamburg. Then he heard this beautiful sound of rock and roll music, and he went down into a quite dark, filthy cellar where these boys were standing on a very, very tiny stage and performed in such way that he was absolutely, let's call it, knocked out.
And he told us about it, he was totally enthusiastic, but we were afraid to go there, you know, but he convinced us to go there. So the next day we three went there.
When I went down the stairs and looked at the stage, I was just amazed how beautiful these boys looked. And being a photographer then, it was a photographer's dream.
And it was Astrid Kirchner, who Stu was to fall in love with, and she was to fall in love with Stu. And Jürgen and Klaus, as I recall, it was the three of them the first night. And they looked so cool.
Ever that first night, I went nearly every night to see them. And that's how it started.
The first promoter that we'd had at the Indra and the Kaiserkeller, Bruno Koschmieder, we stopped working for him and went to work for another fella up the road.
Basically what happened was we found out Sheridan was playing at the top 10. We went there. Echo realised we were the Beatles, who were pulling the crowds from the top 10 round the corner into the Grocer Freiheit. He said, I want you to play at the top 10 with Sheridan. Koschmieder turned around and said, not mincing his words, if you play the top 10 club, you will not work Germany ever again. So typical of us, we turned around and said, and you as well.
And when they played the first night in a top 10 club, Bruno Koschmieder went to the police. You know, for George, it was different. He was only 17 then.
When we were actually going to move out of our old digs, me and Pete Best, and we nailed some up to the wall, like I don't know, and we set fire to it.
There were no lights, and we had some rubbers with us, condoms, and we stuck the rubbers on the wall, lit them. It was to give us light.
Literally, there was about 6 inches around, black scorched, around this nail where we'd burnt this thing. It was a kind of defiant act, you know, at the bad conditions we had.
Six o'clock in the morning, woken up by 2 German policemen and yanked off to Davidstrasse police station. And then when we got charged, they said, we're going to deport you. You know, handcuffed to one another, dragged up the plane like convicts, everyone looking at us, sitting on the plane, and you're never coming back to Germany.